sort of timeline here. I think we'll get started. And then Carmen Torres, who's Executive Director of Embedded Intelligence at Loughborough University, hopefully will join us shortly. On the session, you also got Julia Sutcliffe, Chief Technologist and Director of Air Labs at BAE Systems. We have Sophie Hallett-Jones, who's CEO of Protean Advanced, and Nick Wright, Head of Manufacturing Industries, the Digital Catapult. So hopefully, as a space will appear shortly. The session today is really looking at the journeys of different sized businesses, different manufacturing businesses, as they explore the digital adoption, looking to increase productivity, develop new products, new product lines. And the aim is to understand better the challenges to that digital adoption and where local solutions have been adopted, what has happened to overcome these barriers. And in the current climate, based on if there are things that the COVID pandemic has started to teach us that will act as a pivot point for some of this. And just as I finished, we seem to have lost a speaker. So this is, it was going so well. So why don't we start with the people who are here, and hopefully the others will come back. Sophie, why don't we start with your good self?
Sure. So just for a bit of background, I'm a managing director of a company called Protean Advanced. We provide consultancy in 3D printing and manufacturing. I'm also on the board of a group of companies called Connection Technologies. We employ about 300 people across the UK in things like electronics manufacturing, mechanical engineering, a wide range of manufacturing services, basically. And the idea of digital transformation is something that's interesting to us, obviously, both at group level, but also at the level of my company. We are starting to look at setting up a new business, which will be entirely digital manufacturing. And what we wanted to do was consider how we would do it perfectly from the outset. And actually, that's really challenging. We want perfect ERP system, we want perfect networking, we want our machines to be entirely digitally controlled. And it's presenting a lot of challenges, some of which I've had opportunity to discuss with David at the start. So I think from a group perspective, but also from a very small startup, to me, I've got quite a diverse view on the impact digitally will have. Everybody now.
Let's say that again because I've just had it on silent. Sorry. Julia, how about your views on the whole manufacturing 4.0?
Thank you. So I guess as part of our commitment to our UK customer and to our international customers, we are working very hard to transform our business from a digital perspective, particularly given the high velocity of the technology refresh and the data explosion. It means that we've got to find new ways to be effective, and the COVID situation has accelerated the transformation that was already taking place. So ultimately, we would like to see from a digital perspective a kind of an infosphere that links our organisation, that links us with academia, that links us with our customers, that links right the way through the kind of partnered ecosystem and supply chain, and takes us all the way from operational concept analysis through to design, through to development, through to virtual test, manufacture and build, and then into support and training, that kind of consistent digital thread all the way through. Easy to say, but that's our vision. And so with my Chief Technologist hat on, I'm really interested in the technologies that will enable that. And that's kind of everything from cloud through to blockchain, through to innovative virtual reality techniques for visualizing that kind of scale of data, and for really and to enable that kind of distributed working across that sort of partnership ecosystem. So a change that we were already on with, but this current situation is accelerating some of that.
He's on silent again.
Mute off. But just to continue that thread a little more, how far do you think on that golden thread of digital we are? Right at the beginning, partway through, bits missing?
I think that it's at different stages in different parts of the life cycle and in different parts of the overall supply chain. I think some of what we're doing in the manufacturing build environment is quite advanced in terms of some of the techniques, and certainly Made Smarter and the digital catapult have really been have helped us sort of to accelerate that. Probably the joining up of everything is the bit that really we're trying to do now. So I think you're going from sort of bespoke environments where everybody's got their own synthetic environment, for example, or their own database of data, to now starting to join that is where we're at, and its maturity is dependent on specific applications.
Seems like an ideal throw there to Carmen to come in, given your role in embedded intelligence. Give us your take on the current position.
For me, really, coming from the Wolfson School and mechanical engineering, electrical and manufacturing engineering, and the work that we do there in manufacturing with, as you quite rightly say, embedded intelligence, really three messages that I brought with me today. One of them is, and of course, coming from the university environment, from the learning environment, is talent, the importance of talent and of having the right people in the job, right? And I imagine people in the audience, there will be a mixture of small companies and a bit larger companies, newer companies, a bit long-standing companies, and you will most probably agree with me that having the right people is sometimes the most important challenge. Sometimes it's even more challenging than the technology itself. Right? So first of all, the talent. Second, the ecosystem. Julia was touching on that in a second. Is having that in order to, I guess, it's connected to the talent. Having the right talent here in the Midlands. And keeping them, so when they don't come here, they don't study here or develop their skills here, and then go away. We in the Midlands need to create an ecosystem that makes people stay for a long time. So and it's all a vicious cycle, isn't it? All the reinvestment, etc. Having people with different skills, different backgrounds, that diversity, that definitely needs to be our strength. But having a place, as I said, the Midlands, which people think this is a place to work and live and grow up their family and develop as professionals, definitely this is something that we all should have quite high up in our agendas. And the third thing that I wanted to say today is what I call small steps for long-term impact. In particular with SMEs, and in my experience working with small companies who want to do digital things in manufacturing, the temptation of short-term, of quick fixes that end up being short-term fixes, really, when we get, say, for example, external consultants coming in to do a piece of work that we want them to do. When they go, they leave behind the product they've built. But if we have not involved our people in that journey of setting it up, putting it together, it's short-lived. It's not gonna last long, and that's definitely something that we should perhaps avoid and put measures in place so that doesn't happen. In terms of people, I would like to make the point that I'm referring not just about the young, fresh minds who leave universities. People may think that full of knowledge and full of knowing how to do it. I'm also talking about the middle-aged people who have been around 30, 40 years, who perhaps now the digitalization of manufacturing will be a fantastic boost to their careers and re-enthuse them of what manufacturing is. In terms of young people, I always say, and I like saying, that in Loughborough University, and I'm sure that the other universities in the Midlands is the same situation, people who study mechanical engineering in general, in our case, about 68% of them end up in manufacturing, and they didn't know when they started their degrees. So perhaps manufacturing is not as sexy as other fields, as other sectors. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is that we end up in manufacturing because that's the bread and butter of it. And to finish, really to summarize the ideas that I bring today and the experience that I bring today, is resonating with what Julia was saying. We need to do more with what we've got. And it's about getting the need, meeting the demand, and about having a much more streamlined connection between the solutions that we may have in some businesses or perhaps even university with the need of who has that need, and make that connected, but in a long term, in a sustainable way that is not just a flash in the pan.
Thanks, Carmen. So, I mean, connecting needs to demand and solutions to problems, sort of, Nick, that sort of seems to play straight to the catapult. Would you like to sort of come in at this point?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. I think it does. And again, just a quick bit of background on Digital Catapult. So we're really here to try and accelerate the early adoption of some of these advanced digital technologies. And we have one of our primary focus sectors is manufacturing industries. And we've picked that because we see that there's such an area of opportunity, but also some of the biggest area of need as well. Manufacturing, including, it's inclusive of the full product life cycle. So through engineering and concept, design, testing, qualification into manufacturing and supply chain. It's a huge world that's really complex. And the organizations who are in the sector understand it really, really well. But the world of technology is very different for them. It's very challenging for them to get on board with. But we also represent a fantastic community, and that word ecosystem that Carmen brought up. Like the UK is a tech hub, a global tech hub. We're probably number 3 in the world outside of the US and China in terms of tech startups that we create. And one of the biggest challenges that we see at the Digital Catapult is that these companies are naturally attracted into, what should I say, easy sectors. So we see a lot of fintech, finance, technology startups. We see a lot that go into advertising and marketing, a few into biosciences. And what happens as a result of that is people naturally gravitate towards London. And so London is where the ecosystem of tech capability is, but it's not where the ecosystem of manufacturing and industrial capability is. So one of the things that we try and do as an organization is make sure that we try and build capability within the regions. So we have a number of regional centers. I think some of our colleagues from our Northeast and Tees Valley Centre on the call today. So we have a centre up in that region. We also have one in Belfast, and we have partnerships that are emerging in Bristol, in the Midlands, in Birmingham, and on the South Coast as well, to try and help devolve some of that tech capability. But bridging the gap is a two-way street, and what you often see from manufacturing, it'd be interesting to get Sophie and Julia's view on this, the kind of the industry wants typically tech to solve everything. They want very well-made, very well-developed solutions that are very cheap and very easy to use. And I slightly disagree with Julia. I think we're right at the beginning of the digital journey, really, when it comes to industrial adoption. And I think that means that industry needs to co-develop, because what they have to realize is this tech capability that we've got in London is not going to come out to the manufacturing regions unless we as a manufacturing community make it easier for them to do so. So I think that's a really interesting challenge that we have to the community, what manufacturing and engineering really means, and make it more accessible for them to develop solutions.
One of the things that we're interested in within the UK Tech Clusters Group is that actually the digital activities outside London are plenty active. And the interesting thing is perhaps they understand manufacturing better because they're closer to it. But there's an interesting piece here about knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
If the best way innovation is driven is by demand-led, and that demand is not there if the industry doesn't know what's possible.
Can I interject very quickly, if I may, just to follow on to what Nick was saying? In my experience dealing with industry, there's perhaps a myth that 4.0 is suddenly everything is done by robots and it's almost like a science fiction. But it's really not true. One size doesn't fit all. Some industries, some companies don't really need full-blown 4.0, everything on the menu sort of. Is touching on what Nick was saying, sitting down with the company, with that industry, and finding out what their needs are, and getting them something that works for them. That's sufficient, and most of the time is enough to get them to increase their productivity. So debunking the myth of this is difficult, this is expensive, this is not for me, because I'm just a small company or just a very new company. That's really not true. There's something for everybody, and it doesn't be the Siemens. Say I just use the example as a large company and powerful company. That they all need to be a Siemens sort of solution.
So Sophie, you are not a Siemens. You are a very
I'm not a Siemens.
I'm not a Siemens. On that.
Yeah, I think my friend always, when he's talking about these companies that we need to engage with, kind of outside of our normal tech sphere that we deal with, he says when you're on a train, look out the window at these industrial parks that you go through, and how many of those companies do you think are Industry 4.0? And I would very much agree with that. And for them, the barriers to technology adoption can be really significant. I was talking to David before this call about how we're trying to set this facility up. And one of the biggest problems we have is that the facilities we're looking at don't have fibre connection. You can't have a digital manufacturing business if you don't have a fibre into the unit. And if you don't have a fibre into the unit, well, you're going to have to lay one, which is 13, 14, 15K. Which for a startup is a huge barrier. And these barriers are physical barriers of that research work. Do we have the right power? Do we have the right air? And if we're talking about SMEs and kind of these businesses that we see on the train adopting these new technologies, they're going to need really pragmatic support in order to get there. So one of the points I kind of wanted to make today was, what support is there for businesses like myself who want to set up these very digital-led facilities, businesses, in the same way that you've got a lot of innovation hubs that support fintech, as you said earlier, the easier ones to support digital agencies, that kind of thing. What about for manufacturing? If I want to roll a shutter door and high-speed internet and the right power, what's available to me? And the reality is there's very little. I'm in constant contact, harassing the poor folks at Loughborough, trying to get onto their innovation park, but it's sold out. The iHub in Derby is sold out. So I think there's a real need for government to support startup manufacturing, digital manufacturing with pragmatic things that remove the barriers to entry.
What about from your side, from the larger business end, on these challenges in terms of getting the right digital into your business?
Was that for me?
Sorry, to myself.
So, Julia,
To Julia.
I've gone to Julia.
Yeah.
So, Philip, the challenge, we were just there talking about some of the challenges for the early stage business, which is about actually the place to go and do it. Obviously, BAE Systems, they have the space, they have the place. What are the challenges you're facing in getting this to happen?
Well, I thought Sophie made a really good point there, and I guess one of the things that we are doing is working very closely with the partnership and the supply chain of much smaller businesses, of how we can enable that kind of continuity across that sort of end-to-end ecosystem, if you will. So rather than a very mandrolic transfer of a data set, we're looking at collectively, where do we need to enable digital aspects in order to realise the kind of agile and affordable sort of vision of the future that we have. So recognising that we're moving away from, we're probably moving into a sort of an environment in which you've got lower batch sizes, things are more bespoke. So how do you tailor quickly and in an agile way? And as I say, we're certainly reaching out into much more of a coordinated supply chain, logistics, partnership environment to see how we actually make that happen. And it's and what technologies will enable that, for example. Is it blockchain? Is it cloud environments? How do we do all of that? And I guess one of the things that, if I could just circle back to the point that Carmen made about skills, that's really, really important for a large organisation like one that I belong to. So having that skills pipeline is key, but so is having that a wider partnership that is enabled in the things that we need to be able to do. So I think there is a change in how we approach things that is being accelerated by the current situation that we find ourselves in.
So that's sort of interesting from the point of view of crisis is a great time for innovation. That's what normally drives it. What do you see, any of you, in terms of what the pandemic has done that actually might give greater impetus to this whole issue of Industry 4.0? Nick, you want to start?
I mean, first of all, it's been really hard, David. I think we recognise, talking to a lot of our industrial partners, that but to businesses that turn over quite a lot of money, cash is really important, and saving on cash flow is kind of number one priority. But at the same time, it's kind of, I think, turbocharged the realization that people need to become digital. I totally appreciate Sophie's challenges and the ones in a lot of regions around infrastructure. And for me, it's redoubled certainly my thoughts on the fact that the need for that underlying infrastructure is so important, and it's one of the reasons why we're so focused on 5G as a potential solution to kind of help some of those infrastructure challenges. But in terms of some of the things that have immediately happened around recovery, we've seen people are, Zoom calls and virtual calls, conference calls were a thing of the past, and it was somewhat taboo in a manufacturing environment to potentially be remote or to work from home. And I think businesses that have been able to show that they can get back to work in some way, that they can have some form of distancing, and they can start to return to some kind of normal way of working, but still being safe and still using and doing that, utilizing these digital technologies, is making them realize that maybe the world of tomorrow can look a little bit different. So I think that's the most exciting thing from my point of view, is that being able to have an organization that can work remotely and can work through digital communications opens the door to a whole load more opportunities for embracing digital companies. So that challenge I spoke about earlier, where London is naturally a bit of a hub for digital, and I appreciate there's capability all around the country, but we see that as a bit of a hub at the moment. But there's more of an opportunity for them to go and work with industry if now industry is more open to remote forms of communication. And there isn't so much pressure on companies to have to travel, spend 6 hours of their day on a train in order to have a meeting. And I think that will really accelerate the pace of change for a lot of adoption, certainly of the simple kinds of digital technologies to begin with, and hopefully the more advanced ones over the next couple of years.
I'd like to come to both small and large companies in a second, but just to highlight, because we're running out of time, I'm going to ask you a question, quick answer from all of you at the end. In terms of regional, national government asks, what would be your one ask to coming out of the COVID crisis? So, but Sophie, just coming back to this COVID hook and the small business, how do you see it providing impetus to the sort of stuff you want to do?
I would like to see them increase access to resource availability, such as Julia alluded to at BAE. We'll have similar within Derby, but it's going to become available. I'd like to see government facilitating the connection between small businesses, startups, and those large businesses who have resources, facilities, equipment, people that they could potentially share. I think there's got to be something clever that can be done around.
Okay. You've answered that. That was answered in both ones, so that's fine. Yourself, feel free just to answer the ask, given the time. Julia.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It would be to facilitate the ecosystem of collaboration.
To
facilitate the ecosystem of collaboration
right
through the supply chain.
Right. Carmen.
Well, Sophie and Julia have both said something that I had in mind, but I will add something different here, which is facilitating, capturing the tacit knowledge, the knowledge that is already in the companies and that we lose when that person or those people go away, whether they want to or unfortunately because they have because what happens. But when we leave somebody very knowledgeable, that is a big hit on companies, and in particular in small companies. So enabling to keep that knowledge within the company, despite the people coming and going. That would be my item in my wish list.
Thank you. And poacher come gamekeeper, Nick, what would you put in your wish list?
So my biggest wish list in terms of the regions is to look at specific capability. So manufacturing industries it's a broad topic. You know, we're talking about food and drink and aerospace and automotive and engineering and quality assurance, manufacturing and supply chain. And then we're talking about digital, you know, including AI and IoT and blockchain and God knows what else. And so when we try and mash these together and people want to develop capability in a region, it becomes an incredibly broad topic to grab a hold of. So what I'd like to see from the regions is a sort of a collaboration, a coming together to develop pockets of specific capability in each of the regions, so that we're not redoubling efforts everywhere to develop something generic, but something that comes together as a whole system and means that each area can have something to be globally famous for. Great.
That sounds like a good finish point. Thank you for that. Facilitating ecosystems of collaboration is what Niraj has just posted, and I think that exactly fits with what we just described. So a very brief look at the subject. Thank you all for your time. I think we're now moving on to the next sessions. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.